Are you still filling your primer tubes for your progressive press manually using a primer flipper? Let me show you a better way without breaking the bank. Frankford Arsenal sent a Vibra Prime in for review. And as you can see, it comes with a bunch of things. It comes with a large tube, a small tube, a flipper tray, which also acts as the feeder tray, and the Vibra Prime itself. Now it takes two AA batteries, which I have some rechargeables in here, that you just put into this cartridge. And then the cartridge just goes up into the handle here and snaps into place. Now this flipper tray is something a little different. You have the standard flipper tray, but if you look here, there's an L and an S. So depending on what size primers you're running, you're going to put that side into the Vibra Prime. Now the way this thing works is that you'll use this as your primer flipper, and let's just say I'm using small, which I'll be demonstrating today. On the lid, there's this little corner, and what that does is it blocks off the feeder you're not using. So this will block off the large. Now if I was running a large, I'd flip it around and it will block off the small. So that way, if you tip the Vibra Prime the opposite direction, the primers don't come in and then fall out. After you put your primers in here, and I'll show you this thing in action in just a little bit, you'll put this into the Vibra Prime and choose whichever one you're using. If you're running large, we'll take the large one in, put that in, and twist to lock it in, and it locks everything into place. Now, after you squeeze the trigger and it vibrates all the primers down into the primer tube, you can feed this directly into your progressive press, or with this little tube here, you can, let's grab one of my Dillon tubes here, you just basically put it in there. And with this thing being filled, you pull the cotter pin and it fills your tubes. That way you're ready to reload your press if you have multiple tubes. Otherwise, you can just use this as your primer filler and then fill your progressive press using this. Now let's see this thing in action. Now you can see I got some small rifle primers here, and you can see I have a couple that are flipped around, which, I'm going to use this as my flipper tray. And I'll drop. Now, obviously, we got to get these cups to be upside down. And if you just kind of use a circular motion, you can see that they flipped over, just like a normal flipper tray. Now let's load this into the Vibra Prime. And I am running small. And there is my small tube. Now, it's going to be a little hard to do on this one camera here. So what I found is if I get them all into this corner and then slowly lean this forward, then squeeze the trigger, there they go. Lean forward a little more as it gets towards the end. Now I run a Dillon 650 and I keep multiple tubes available so that way I can keep my reloading session running so I don't have to stop and reload a tube and break my concentration as I'm loading. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer all these primers into one of my Dillon tubes. Now with your Dillon tubes you have this end, and that's how you pick up your primers. So what we're going to actually have to do is pop this end off, and then I'm going to put it into the Vibra Prime tube like that. So you can see I have my Dillon tube here hooked up to the Vibra Prime, and I'm actually going to remove this just to make this a little easier for me here. And then from here, I'm just going to pull the cotter pin from the Vibra Prime, and it just loaded my Dillon tube. From here, we'll just pull this off. And yep, this tube is ready to go. I'm actually going to put my cap back on, so that way if I happen to drop this, my primers aren't going everywhere. Now, I read in some comments that people were having problems with Winchester small pistol, and quite frankly, I stopped using Winchester a few years ago because of problems with their primers. They were just not detonating, and some were even having problems feeding through my Dillon primer system. So let's load this thing up and see how the Winchesters do. And right there, most of them loaded, but you just got one that looks like it's a little out of spec. I can eventually shake it down into the tube. There you go, Winchester primers, just not a really good thing. Now this just wouldn't be a good test with two types of primers. I do have a third type, and I do have some Remington small rifle primers that I'm going to test with here. So we have the Vibra Prime loaded up. And as you can see, the Remington's loaded up no problem. So that's the Frankford Arsenal Vibra Prime. Would I spend my own money on it? Absolutely. For years I had drooled all over the Dillon RF 100. But at $400 plus a conversion kit to convert it over to large primers, it was just outside of my reach. The Vibra Prime is $60 and you can do both. For that price, there's just no way that you can go wrong. Thank you for watching. Hope you're staying safe out there, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.